Welcome to our presentation of Information Worlds of the Homeless. The presentation and fieldwork is a result of the efforts of Ty Bradley, Ashley Farley, and Reed Garber-Pearson for LIS 510. Any photographs not cited during the presentation were taken during our fieldwork. This slide is an overview of the different components of our presentation. We have definitions, which will set the foundation of the investigation we completed, literature view, which is an overview of current literature trends, our fieldwork discussion, which will be an in-depth look at the fieldwork we conducted in different sections of this information world, a synthesis of our findings, what we discovered, and the theories that help support our findings, and finally the implications. How do these theories serve the library and information world as a whole? On this slide, we're going to go over the definitions that we used in our investigation of the homeless information world. So who are they? In our definition, they're any individual over the age of 18. Therefore, we didn't look at any homeless youth. And these individuals were of any age above that, nationality or sexual orientation. There are many different terms that we saw in literature and that we heard in the field, from car campers, temporary homeless, transitionally homeless, insecurely homeless. Each person defines their own situation differently based upon their past experiences, current needs, and future hopes. What are they? They create communities and an infrastructure, whether or not their homeless situation is temporary. Where do they do it? In King County was our main focus, and specifically the city of Seattle, but this is definitely an information world that could spread, well, the entire world. Why they do what they do? There are a myriad of reasons why one can find themselves lacking permanent housing, ranging from illness, divorce, loss of job, or mental illness. And how do they do it? They mainly use technology or their local support systems to find information, to interact with others, to share information. Really, the possibilities are endless here. On this slide, we're going to talk about the one-night count of 2015. And here's an overview of what the one-night count is. So this was the 35th annual one-night count of homeless people in King County. It took place during the early hours of Friday, January 23rd, 2015. So this is the most accurate information we could possibly find. The coalition organized more than 800 volunteers, many of which also work within the libraries, who fanned out across the county to count the number of men, women, and children who were homeless and sleeping outdoors without shelter between the hours of 2 and 5 a.m. They counted people trying to survive in cars and tents, riding late-night buses, or curled up in blankets under bridges or in the doorways. And that same night, staff at agencies that operate shelters and traditional housing programs recorded select information about people staying or utilizing their programs. Staff at the Homeless Housing Program of King County's Community Service Division compiled this data that you see here. The most important piece of information that this count offers to us is the fact that there's a 21% increase of those who find themselves without housing. And this really proves that the types of services that are now available are not enough to cover the need that is now present, and that we really need to look at providing other services and who's responsible for stepping up and helping these people in their time of need. So this is a huge information need and societal need that we are still looking for the right ways to fill and provide for these people. In the next section of this presentation, we're going to discuss the literature we researched and read on current findings of the homeless populations and their information needs, as well as their interactions with technology. We will cover the consensus, disagreement, any anomalies, and further study as well.
We began the literature portion of this presentation with a discussion of two important areas of consensus. It seems that scholars at least agree that it is worthwhile to understand the information behavior of homeless people, as numerous articles on the subject have been published. Another important aspect of agreement is that it is important to understand how homeless people interact with new technologies to seek information. The authors suggest that homeless people are adopting technologies as they proliferate through society as a whole. However, there are areas where scholars disagree as well. As Chapman observed, the library and information science field is one in which, quote, we have no central theory or body of interrelated theories we can view as middle range, unquote. Likewise, Donald Case's book, Looking for Information, outlines 9 models of information behavior, as well as various theories to explain it. The lack of unified theories applies as much to studies of the information behavior of homeless people as it does to other aspects of library and information science. Possible aspects of the information environment to focus on include individual users, systems of information retrieval, and the funding and operation of government institutions that provide information. Scholars also disagree on which aspect of the homeless population to focus on when they do a study. Subpopulations studied thus far include homeless children in family shelters, homeless youth, unsheltered street homeless, and homeless parents. The most interesting anomaly that we discovered in our exploration of the literature is also one that was described by Chapman in her landmark 1996 study, The Impoverished Life World of Outsiders. Chapman observed that economic poverty is not the same thing as information poverty. This contradicted the conventional wisdom of the LIS field at the time as much as it does the conventional wisdom of mainstream society now, almost 20 years later. A person can experience economic deprivation while still successfully employing information behaviors to improve their way of life and their mastery of life. This counterintuitive notion informs our choice of aspects of the information world of homeless people to study. Studies also tend to neglect the information behavior of homeless adults, and these anomalies inform our own study. In order to address the anomalies described in the previous slide, our study aims to provide a perspective on the diversity of homeless lives in the United States. So we include adults as well as homeless youth in our study. Our study also demonstrates some of the magnitude of the information capital, be that cultural capital or cognitive capital or social capital, of homeless people.
The theory that we use to investigate this information world is the Savalian model of everyday life information seeking, or ELIS, which was developed in the mid-1990s. The creation of this model was mainly based on the need to highlight the role of social and cultural factors that affect people's way of choosing and using information sources within their everyday settings. As Savalian speculates, even though individuals select and use various sources to solve problems or make sense of their everyday world, the source preferences and use patterns are ultimately socially conditioned. We kept this hypothesis in mind while formulating and executing our fieldwork. As we continue looking at the ELIS model, we're going to break it down piece by piece and set it in the framework of our information world. So the residents of Tent City 3 definitely have a set way of life or order of things. Each resident had a role to play, ensuring that the structure of the community remained strong. Each resident also within that had hobbies, and that many times include other participants in the community. They were very much engaged in reading, watching TV, using their technology devices, or just helping each other out in normal day-to-day activities. Next, we have the mastery of life component. And this also includes a problem-solving behavior, which stuck out to us as one of the most critical components within this population. Their everyday life is filled with a constant evaluation of problems to be solved, ranging from finding food and shelter to solving current life situations. We heard stories such as court cases, divorces that are still pending, and we saw this within the members of Tent City 3. Information sources seem to be very tied to the community, even with portable devices. Selection of information sources and channels were grounded in locality. What information was presented at community meetings, what flyers were present, which was pretty much everywhere, and whatever was easily accessible to and easy to understand. They didn't seem to be a population that really sought out a lot of information. They took in what was there and made use of it that way. This next component is the input variables. So, what are the variables that feed into this system on a daily basis? First, we have the values, which for our information group that we observed is community, friendship, and trust. And I think trust is a strong foundation to make all of these components work together. And then we have the material capital, which was their possessions, their supply of food, and also their pets. Next major component is social capital. What was their position within the community? What is their sense of responsibility to that community and to themselves? And then networking with outside sources, which in our observations seem to also include members of that community. It was rare that one person would go out and seek information on their own. They often would network together to complete this goal. And then we have the cognitive capital. Many reflected upon their place in life, and they were very open to us in discussing what it meant to them to be human and how they define themselves within their own world. And then finally, we have the life situation. The health situation is definitely one of huge concern, and how they gain access to healthcare. It seems from our observations that they do utilize the healthcare services open to them. Many of them raved about how great the foot care clinic is that they're able to use, and so this is definitely the last important input variable to make the system work as a whole. Next, we will discuss the fieldwork that we conducted. The two methods we utilized were observation and interview, and during our biggest observation of Tent City 3, we were able to also interview individuals in a free-flow format while we conducted an activity, which we will discuss next.
On February 10th, Ashley and we went out to the Ballard branch of Seattle Public Libraries to interview Adult Services librarian Jonathan Koroshek. In addition to his duties providing readers advisory and reference services to the public, Jonathan spends a lot of his time providing services in the library that will help homeless populations connect with available community resources. Some of the resources Jonathan connects with include St. Luke's Church, which provides free breakfast, the Neighborhood Health Care Clinic, which is free for homeless people, and the food bank. And nearby to the public library, an urban rest stop, which is meant to provide a free place for homeless to get hygiene services like showers and laundry, is in construction currently. And they're nearly finished, but they've ceased progress temporarily due to Ballard residents and small business owners who are complaining about this. Ballard is the busiest branch of SPL by volume. Ballard also has the largest population of car campers in Seattle. We saw at the beginning of this video the growing number of homeless in Seattle. The one-night count, which was conducted recently, reported that there's a 21% increase since last year, and the vast majority of those are people living in their cars. And according to Jonathan, 25% of all those car campers live in Ballard due to more lenient zoning policies. And because of those lenient zoning policies and the proximity of services in Ballard, Ballard is considered to be one of the most forgiving places to be homeless in Seattle. In addition to connecting patrons to local resources, Jonathan serves as the Seattle Public Library liaison to Tent City 3, which we visited for socializing and observation. Tent City 3, in its current location at Seattle Pacific University, a private Christian institution, is in this. So we've plugged in much of the information from Jonathan's interview into the Mastery of Life category in the Everyday Life model. And this step of the model is about how we approach everyday life problems that align with values and social circumstances. It's reliant on the principle that meaningful order won't just reproduce itself automatically. Each individual in a group must engage in problem solving to seek that information. And in cases such as for many homeless populations, where the order of things has been threatened so much, this information seeking becomes more difficult and way more critical. This stage seeks to eliminate continual tension between the perceptions of how things are at this moment and how things should be. Jonathan's view of mastery for homeless is optimistic cognitive, although the assumption is pessimistic affective, that homeless are so because they have learned to be helpless and because they don't have the abilities. Jonathan talked a lot about how he envisions homeless folks approaching the library for resources, not necessarily how SPL can come up with programs. It should be about what those folks need. So when he does outreach, he says, "This is why you should come to us. This is what we can do for you." Then he asks, "What do you want from us? What can we bring to you?" Jonathan said that it's all about being available and receptive to a broad range of requests and needs. And people are receptive for the most part. Most homeless are friendly and are trying to break free of their situations, but a cyclical system of poverty keeps them down. Material capital, like money, is low, but social capital, like contacts and networks, might grow because of the work that Jonathan's doing. So he seeks to bridge some of these information gaps for homeless in Seattle, leveraging their social capital. And they use those resources to leverage improvement over mastery of life and ultimately their way of life. On February 13th, the three of us went to Tent City 3, located at Seattle Pacific University. And Tent City 3 moves every 3 months due to zoning, and this is the second time that SPU has hosted them. Some quick facts about Tent City 3. They are entirely self-governed and organized, and upon entering as a resident, you must sign a contract agreeing to be an active member. Pictured here is Jeff. He's a resident and the arts and crafts organizer, and we met him when we were at Tent City 3. He's also an executive committee member. Tent City 3 is a secure environment that adheres to strict rules of sobriety and anti-violence, and children are not allowed only because they would have to send them to Child Protective Services. But it's one of the few places that couples can stay together when they become homeless. When brainstorming how to conduct fieldwork, our biggest goal was ensuring that respect and honesty was always at the forefront of our minds when interacting with stigmatized groups such as homeless people. We wanted to plan an activity that would entice people to participate and give us the space to have natural conversation. While playing with the idea of planning an activity, we thought of arts and crafts as a way to engage the group, and Ty came up with creating duct tape wallets. Something fun, manageable for supplies, teaching, and also a useful craft in the end. And the residents at Tent City 3 exhibited a lot of mastery of life in the way that their camp was even organized. The security station, which everyone has to pass through in order to get to camp, had well-organized supplies. They had a coffee maker for security working night hours and paperwork for checking volunteers into camp. The residents quickly set us up in a social tent with Christmas lights, and this was subdivided into smoking and non-smoking sections. We were in the non-smoking section. The smoking section was a continuous hub of activity throughout our visit. There were people in there chatting and having discussions, and there were people playing chess, and there was food to be eaten. There was a lot of activity. And as in the Reddit observation, if someone had cigarettes, they were shared in development of social capital, and residents exhibited problem-solving behavior as they discussed issues of security and mobility in the camp together. They all had opinions. Everywhere along the fence of Tent City, as well as in the common areas, were tons of flyers of upcoming events and information about where things are and how to find them. They had lots of posters of the poetry event that they have weekly. They had posters about the health care that happens nearby. So social information sharing is a common goal and a main activity for Tent City. Participating in the Wallet project expressed the residents' everyday life information seeking inputs in a number of ways. Their values were reflected in the desire for an everyday object and the respectful behavior that they showed to each other and to volunteers. And I can't stress this enough, they were really nice and supportive of one another, both verbally encouraging and even helping one another to finish their wallets. If one person didn't understand, they all pitched in to help that person. Residents who were lacking the material capital of a wallet found the opportunity to obtain one. Most striking was the cultural and cognitive capital displayed by residents during the activity. One resident displayed considerable knowledge of popular music, naming brands as they were played on a set of small speakers. Others discussed recent popular films that they had seen. Another had tattoos from his favorite game and a pet named after one of the characters. Two residents had a discussion of the differences between English, Japanese, and Samoan writing systems. It was overall a very stimulating environment with lots of activities and conversations, all in the vein of respect and sharing.
On the following slides, we consider LIS inputs in the context of a thread from the social media website Reddit. And here is the thread that we analyzed. It's about unwritten rules and codes of homelessness, and actually it reveals quite a bit about the information world of being homeless. We looked at the top 200 comments, which gave us plenty. There were 20,000 words there, and some very interesting themes emerged. In analyzing the thread on Reddit, we found the following themes that demonstrate how inputs into the LIS system are used for the mastery of life. Homeless people accomplished invisibility through their values and their cultural and material capital. They displayed considerable cognitive capital in the form of ingenuity in improving their life situation. They demonstrated social capital in the formation of communities, and their diversity is notable in values, social capital, and in the situation of life. One of the most interesting things to appear was the information skill of passing as mainstream, visibility. Just the idea that if you look like a college student, you could hang around on a campus or in a hotel lobby or at the gym or at the casino, and nobody would know the difference. Two more of the really interesting posts. The top one suggesting that if you get yourself a button-up shirt and some slacks, they make a big difference. And the next one, stay clean and chill at college campuses. I'm thinking about the people I've seen on college campuses. This could have been a lot of people that I've seen, and I had no idea. Perhaps you think the same thing? But it's not just at college campuses. This post talks about going to a gambling establishment in Las Vegas and just chilling out, pretending that you're watching one of the TVs. And I found a picture of the actual venue that they're talking about, so maybe one of those people was homeless. And it also suggests sleeping by the pool at a hotel. Just so ingenious. This discussion of the Reddit thread would not be complete without talking about what people had to say about the library. So here's the library where I used to work a few years ago. There were certainly a few people who came there who had no home, but it was a great resource for them. Libraries were pointed out as a great resource for social capital, cultural and cognitive capital, and for improving the situation of life. 11 of the top 200 messages contained references to libraries, so that's about 5%, and all of them are about how great a resource the library is when you are homeless. This post, displaying bulleted points of advice on surviving while homeless, conveys significant information capital developed during the experience of homelessness. This reinforces Chapman's premise that a person can be economically poor and not be information poor. Here's another post about sharing information capital while homeless. The post describes how trans-scheduling information was photocopied and shared to help other homeless people move around the country. Like the previous post sharing information on trains, cognitive and social capital is also displayed in this post describing how useful items of clothing found while dumpster diving should be set neatly aside for the next person in need who comes along. This was the highest rated post in the thread by Reddit participants. This selection of posts from the thread displays more of the social capital developed among homeless people. The posts describe how readily many homeless people reach out to each other and form communities or offer advice on how to do so when needed. However, other posts describe how investing too much social capital in others is inadvisable. The expectation that others will seek to exploit your social investment may be a cause of information poverty and detract from the mastery of life. Posts such as these two describe how social capital is developed in formation of differing communities. These two posts by people who experienced homelessness in the Seattle area describe a variety of homeless communities that they observed, such as traveling punks, juggalos, and others. Other examples of differing values, social capital, and situations of life are observed in posts such as this one about someone working very hard and still being homeless. Other sorts of homeless experiences described in the post include families who were down on their luck, people who were having issues with mental health, and communities of rainbow kids using psychedelic drugs.
There are strong implications for professional practice and policymaking. These include services, education, and LIS professionals. Services are twofold to include both short and long term. More services are needed that would feed and house currently homeless people. Also needed are longer term solutions such as more accessible ways for finding a job, getting legal help, and mental health care. These are preventative as well as being aimed at targeting already homeless populations. These are questions that need to be continually asked by policymakers, social workers, and community members. Services like the proposed urban rest stop are great. Many homeless say they can't find a job because they can't stay hygienic. We need more of these, and we need community members to support them. Educating not only the homeless population themselves on information or available services, but educating the general public to overcome the stigma of homelessness to strengthen the community. We each have a role to play in this piece, as we are all members of communities that have homelessness in it. In LIS, we can further study the information world of the homeless, make library policies to better serve and facilitate the homeless population. Libraries can network and advocate by attending community meetings and bringing services together in one spot so that folks can utilize them more easily. In conclusion, homeless populations are a diverse group. We focused on adults in the Ballard area of Seattle. This population of people has a strong set of values that inform their way of life and order of things. They value community, friendship, and trust. Their material capital is lower than average, and their life situation makes keeping things in order more challenging, but they have a strong sense of social and cognitive capital that provides an optimistic outlook. They are active, engaged, and problem-solving. Libraries are helping to keep things in order by providing centralized services, disseminating information, educating the public, and advocating for more services. With homelessness still on the rise in Seattle, there are questions and concerns each one of us can be considering. If we don't let homeless people become invisible, we as a society have a chance at bringing it to the forefront of political and social campaigns.